Hey guys, I just finished watching Barbarossa's take on the Robin Williams suicide issue, and it seems as if everyone is chiming in, so I thought I'd add my own 2 cents to the issue, and I'm not going to cover everything. I want to keep this relatively brief if possible. But two primary issues. One, let's talk about this guy who called on Fox News Robin Williams a coward, and likewise, this is related to what Gene Simmons said as well. Now, you hear this very often. Oh, he killed himself. He was a coward. He couldn't face reality, blah, 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 blah. And I don't want to go too much into this because I'm going to be talking a lot more extensively in a video I've been working on and off. I say on and off because, as many of you know, I have this chronic illness that is chronic insomnia, which when it's really bad, and it has been, it just prevents me from doing anything. At the moment, I think I'm getting about 4 to 5 hours at the moment for the last 2 days. If this keeps up, I'll be functional again. So let's hope. But with regards to the concept of suicide being a cowardly act, it seems pretty clear to me as to why people use that, I think, misnomer in describing it. Human beings have an innate fear and terror of death. They're terrified of death. And so when another human being takes his life, other people who find out about it, who are exposed to it, are then exposed to their own terror, their own inner horror, their own fear, their own anxiety, their own angst. And this then precipitates a kind of gut reaction. And it's one that's granted social consensus. That is, it's condoned and everyone joins in. Oh, it's cowardly. It takes courage to live life. Not really. It's highly instinctual to live life. It's most of us have a core instinct of survival. Be it on the basis of instincts, including eating, breathing, shitting, etc., and also just persevering on going to work or getting up and doing the laundry because you have to. I mean, these seem like minuscule items, but my point is, most of us have a deep-seated urge to live. The whys and wherefores are a different issue. So it's quite the opposite. It's actually not a tremendous act of courage to live life. It's a tremendous act of courage to kill yourself. Why? Because you are committing yourself consciously to absolute annihilation. You are consigning yourself to a realm of oblivion whence you shall not return. And whither, I think you go, and that takes balls to annihilate your consciousness, knowing the consequences takes a lot of balls. And so the response of a lot of people, including this Fox News guy, is, "Oh, coward! He's a coward. He left behind his children." No, he wasn't a coward. Whatever prompted it, and I'll get into that in a second. Clearly, the act of taking your life is something that runs counter to our most basic instincts of desire for life and desire for survival. So, if anything, maybe I wouldn't use the term bravery. It's certainly not cowardly. It's somewhere on the opposite pole. To voluntarily to choose to take your own life. That takes balls. Not everyone can do it. And if they do it, they probably have a good reason. And clearly, a Fox News guy doesn't have the balls to take his life. See, we live in a world where the denial of death. It's a book by Ernest Becker as well. And like I said, I'll be talking a lot more about this in this forthcoming video. A lot more about death and our relationship to death. But among many other things. We are just horrified on a subconscious level of our mortality, and so we have a lot of mechanisms that we use and employ to combat that. And in the case of suicide specifically, one of them is to say, "Oh, that guy was a coward because he killed himself." So that's my take on that particular issue. I mean, people are afraid of death, basically, and anything that invokes the image of death or that fear of death in themselves, they tend to deflect with that kind of those kinds of words, those kinds of descriptions, cowardly, blah, blah, blah. As far as the Gene Simmons quote, I mean, this is a constant, this is just bad thinking. I mean, the genes, I think Barbarossa covered a very interesting topic when he talks about different kinds of suffering in that video. I want to cover something else, is that we don't, because we're all different, we have a different genome, we have different neurochemistry, we have different environment, we have a different background. All these factors contribute to a unique person, and thus it's impossible to be intellectually honest and then transfer one person's experience to another person and then say, because X, that is, because person X suffered so and so much, Y has no right to blah blah. Say this is kind of the Nether-Ape thought way of thinking. Because Gene Simmons' mother suffered in a concentration camp, that person cannot be suffering. I mean, when you think about it, it's absolutely absurd. That's not to say that his mother didn't suffer. I'm sure she did. It's just that her suffering doesn't nullify or vitiate someone else's suffering decades later on the other side of the world. And because we're all so different, we all have different ways of coping with things. And there's no way you can put yourself in someone else's shoes and say, man, I dealt with that fine, why can't you? Well, the answer is that kind of simple, because that person isn't you. Imagine how absurd, and it's really actually identical. Imagine how absurd it would be if Usain Bolt said, man, I sprinted that shit faster than anyone else in the world. Why can't you do that? I mean, it's the same principle, because we're all hardwired in certain ways, but we're also built differently to deal with different things. I mean, I'm really loath to talk about it because I find it kind of almost jinxes me, but let's talk about the capacity of sleep. People idiots, I think they're idiots, because only an idiot would tell you this, but they say, well, if you're tired, why don't you just go to bed? If you have chronic insomnia, that's the point, you can't. Now, if you could actually will yourself out of this condition, I would have done it 20 or 19 years ago. And I was talking to a friend of mine that he just goes to bed and wakes up 9 or 10 hours later and never wakes up once. It's incredible. I can't even imagine what that's like. And so the idea of someone saying, let's say I were going through a certain experience and chronic sleep deprivation affects me. It definitely affects my ability to produce videos, especially scripted videos, I can guarantee you that, or exercise, and. That's going to affect me. And the other person is assuming who gets 8 or 9 hours consistently. So my point is that there's no way to transfer your own experience to someone else's experience and then accurately say, well, either you have no right. That's just a nonsense statement. No right, or it doesn't make sense that you're suffering, or you shouldn't be blah blah blah. And you see this all the time. I was watching the other day this guy David So. He's a Korean American comedian. Sometimes he produces funny stuff, and he was making this comment about these, I think, homeless guys who can't get work, and he was citing his father who had arrived to the United States and wasn't able at the time, couldn't speak English, and yada yada yada, and how he was able to get a job, so these guys should be able to too. We don't know the circumstances of these whichever homeless people he was talking about. So we're very quick to judge, I think, without really understanding, and I think that is a Nether-Ape tendency. It's certainly to claim to understand implicitly, at least, someone else's circumstances. And that's actually why, getting back to a topic I've talked often, understanding that there's no such thing as free will, and having suffered from a chronic illness now for, over 2 decades, has definitely made me a more compassionate person. I might not be able to understand someone else's suffering in that specific context because I'm not that person, but I certainly know that there are things we just don't have control over. And the idea that, person X suffered in the Holocaust, so Mr. Seattleite or whoever, Robin Williams or whoever that person might be, cannot suffer equally or more is really beyond absurd, because maybe the guy in Seattle has a neurochemistry that's completely different. Maybe his receptors are totally burnt out, and his serotonin production is just totally fucked. Maybe he has something in his body, and I'm just making this up, that totally nullifies the production of oxytocin. I mean, we don't know the circumstances, and this is Nether ape talk on the part of someone like Gene Simmons. I mean, most of us unfortunately speak this way, and we think this way. You cannot assume because you can do something, someone else can do it. But this is how the world is run, and it's not rational. I understand why people do it, but it's not rational. If I can do it, anyone can do it. Maybe, maybe not. So, and let me connect this to the Robin Williams thing. Getting back to Robin Williams, it seems clear to me that despite all the speculation as to why he did it, none of us knows. I mean, I watched a snippet of Stefan Milieu, and this guy is so full of himself sometimes. He blank out made a categorical statement: addiction is caused by child abuse. Yeah, I'm sure in some cases, the circumstances, there's evidence that should suggest that substance addiction has a heavy or a high causal factor, genetic factor, for example. Obviously, environment in interacting with those genes, and I mean, there's so many ways. You can't just say it's caused by child abuse. But and I'll be talking about this kind of thing in my next video as well. So, but he said it's caused by this. Other people say it's caused by he had to pay his wives lots of alimony. We don't really know. I mean, certainly we can say obviously the reason why he killed him. There's something about his neurochemistry that ultimately led him to take this decision. But beyond the causes that led up to those neurotransmitters firing off and leading him to the decision that he actually took, these are unknown to us. We don't know the details. We don't know how he was feeling. We don't know how much he suffered. We don't know how little he suffered. All speculation. And this is why any statement to the effect of, oh, well, he was a coward, or, if I were in his shoes, I wouldn't, blah, 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 blah. This is just meaningless babble. It has no real meaning, because the truth is, on a very deep level, we can't relate to each other. We cannot, because we're separate entities. We have our own thoughts, and we have our own genome, and the way that genome interacts with the environment. And there's just no way. Look, for all of you champion sleepers out there, I could describe to you what it's like to chronically feel exhausted and just have fog in your head when you're trying to think, and feel really weak when you're trying to, lift heavy weights. That's just a description, though. And even if you were to, miraculously, or rather unmiraculously, fall into a state of chronic insomnia, I would say that it would be a different experience for you. I mean, I'm sure on some level you could relate, and I've talked to a few people who suffer from it. I mean, even though the manifestations are always different, but it's always different. And so, I mean, what is suffering? How much am I suffering relative to someone else? I don't know. How much was Robin Williams suffering relative to someone else? I don't know. How much is the Seattleite suffering relative to someone else? I don't know. And how much was Simmons' mother suffering in the concentration camp? We can only speculate and guess, and thus I don't think we really should. We shouldn't try to just guess causation in a case such as suicide, and we shouldn't try to pretend that we know how much one person is suffering versus another, and pretend that we can transfer our own experiences to other people. Now, it is true on some level human beings relate to each other in this way, but at the end of the day, our consciousness is fundamentally cut off from other consciousnesses. We feel, we perceive differently. Each of us is different in this respect, and so one man's suffering is another man's joy, or one man's shit is another man's feast. It's not that it's actually, in this case, it is relative, because because it comes down really to your individual genetic makeup, environmental interaction with that genome, and so on and so forth. How are we going to know? So in getting closer to the end of this video, I don't know why Robin Williams killed himself. I know he was suffering. That was obviously a reason. but I'm not going to speculate as to how much he suffered, whether I think it's possible that his ex-wives and what have you contributed to it. But you know, and I also think this is why this is my own theory. Why some people then gather the courage to kill themselves, because they realize that trying to relate your own subjective personal experience to someone else's is an utter impossibility. As I said, I know this from firsthand experience, with respects to a lot of different things, but right now, with my sleep issues, and it's just not. I can describe it all I want. It's not going to help you, unless you're me. Unless you're Stardust, you can't. You're not going to get it. Unless you are Robin Williams, you're not going to get it either. So the best thing we can do is, we can mourn the loss for those of you who are interested in his work. I think it's unfortunate, but we certainly shouldn't cast moral aspersions or judgment on it. I mean, the term cowardice, as I said, this is a term that the cowards who don't have the balls to kill themselves on their own give to people who actually muster the courage to do it. And that decision. I'm not one of these people, I think, who thinks that there's some. There's no religious prescription in my case against it, obviously. But if someone wants to kill himself, I probably would ask him, what are the reasons, yada yada yada. I'm not going to blow smoke up his ass and say, oh, that's not a reason to kill yourself, because there are this many people. I don't know what's going on in this guy's head and what his own unique neuro and biochemistry is doing to his body. I don't know. I don't know what he's feeling. So if he feels the need to do it, I'm not going to tell him not to on the grounds that, other people are, suffering a lot more, so you have no right to do it. That's just absurd. If I were to talk him out of it, I'd probably say, well, look, obviously this has something to do with your neurochemistry. We could try to fix it with antidepressants, although, we don't really know how that's going to work out ultimately, because we don't really understand all the functions and how antidepressants work on an absolute level. We understand the basics. Otherwise, I might actually let him do it. Now, people might say, "Oh, horrified to say it," but people have to make their own decisions, and I can't transplant myself to someone else. I can't tell him that his suffering, your suffering is not great enough, so you're not allowed to kill yourself. That's just absurd. It's absurd. So, people. This is just, as I said, Nether Ape talk, pure Nether Ape talk. People who think they're in control of themselves, who think they're in touch with reality, who just don't have a fucking clue. They don't have a fucking clue. Because we got all this shit running in the background in our brains, in our bodies. We don't know how it's affecting us. We don't know how it affected us throughout our lives, lead up to the way we are right now. We don't know, and in looking at, say, Holocaust survivors, there are different accounts. Different people reacted differently to it. And once again, just goes to show, people are different. People are wired differently. It's in this respect, we are very unique. So suffering, and making generalizations about suffering, at least with respect to this concept, this one area of this one human domain, are absurd. Because how can you generalize about suffering when it comes down to that, the individual makeup, interaction with the environment, all these other things, and we can't get in other people's heads. We're stuck in our own heads. I can try to communicate to you and the rest of the world as strongly as possible, how I feel and what I think and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, you are cut off from me and I am cut off from you. And so we're left with a dilemma. So all we can do really is we can acknowledge the sadness of the event. It's unfortunate. But we shouldn't cast moral aspersions. We shouldn't pass judgment rather. And I think all of this points to the fact that we need more compassion in this world in general. We need to accept people suffering on their own terms, rather than making fatuous and silly comparisons that have no basis in reality. Unless if we were all genomic replicas of each other, yeah, you could make that, but we're not. So anyway, that's all I got to say on this topic. Like I said, if I can get back to a 4 to 5 hour schedule, then I'm going to be working on that video soon. So we'll see. I mean, it fluctuates a lot. So thanks for watching. Everyone take care. Bye-bye.